Hey there, it's Andrea, and welcome to the Voice of Influence podcast. Today I have with me Soula Parassidis. She is the CEO of Living Opera, a multimedia technology company that unites classical music and technology communities to produce transformative content. Now, what that means, we'll figure out in a second, okay? All right, so she's a Greek Canadian operatic soprano, an entrepreneur, anti-human trafficking advocate, and producer. She has appeared on stage in the world's major performance venues. At Living Opera, her work is centered around reforming the pain points of performing arts, equal access, distribution, funding, for both artists themselves and the communities that they serve. Welcome to the podcast, Voice of Influence, Soula.
Thank you so much, Andre. I really appreciate it.
It's so good to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've got to ask, having a bit of a vocal background myself, nothing in comparison by any means, but I was a music education vocal performance major. I'm so curious, how did an accomplished soprano become the CEO of a music and technology company?
Well, first of all, I still wrestle with that title because it's a bit foreign to me. I think maybe like a lot of people, I always felt like, oh, in order to hold the title of CEO, you have to go to fancy business school or you have to have the certain kind of credentials. And what I've come to realize is it really just means that I'm the visionary that sets things in motion, and that's okay. And anything that is not within my skill set, I can find somebody far more capable than me to take over that task. So it started quite organically and simply and almost by accident. My husband, Norman Reinhardt, is also an international tenor. And at the start of 2019, we decided to start creating relevant content for emerging opera singers, just leveraging social media because it was there and it was free. Nobody else was really doing that at the time. And it was pretty simple. It wasn't some massively planned strategy. We would just go live once a week on Instagram and Facebook, choosing a topic that we thought would be relevant for the younger singers or even our peers. And people seemed to like it and catch on to what we were doing. And it just kept going. So much so that I started to build on multiple platforms and realized I had too much content to house and sort of keep up with. So I went on Wix and paid $100 to create a small website for us to house all the content there. And people still kept watching. And, you know, we were 6 months into the project, 9 months into the project, still singing full time. In 2019, I had the most prolific travel schedule I'd had in quite some time because I had to go to 3 different continents in a year. And I'm sort of realizing this year, 2023, is sort of shaping up to be a year like that as well. So I've just come back from a whirlwind 3 months on the road, which we can talk about or not talk about. It's
First
fine.
of all, just let me say that's fantastic to hear. I mean,
Thank
I
you.
know it had to have been a really rough few years. Congratulations on being back on the
Thank
road in
you.
such a
Thank
dramatic
you.
fashion.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think just to detour for 1 second, when the pandemic happened, because we were so focused on this project and I've experienced lots of ups and downs in my career. It wasn't as dramatic for me as perhaps even for my husband or some other colleagues who'd sort of had their work all in one lane, doing one thing consistently for years and years and years. I had a rocky start to my career to begin with. So I've been through major disruptions before, which has perfectly equipped me for that period of time. But anyway, the way I finally turned this into a company again was quite accidentally. It was the pandemic, and we had already had it in mind to launch Living Opera as a small business. Prior to that, it was just free social media content, but we were getting more and more requests from our online audience for private voice lessons and just conversation coaching. And then Norman had started to piece together a small online course for emerging artists. And this wasn't on my mind at all. I was having fun just answering the DMs and helping the singers and seeing people get excited about getting the relevant information. And so we had it in mind to launch in April of 2020, not knowing that we would basically be positioned to be the only people with an online business of that nature during the pandemic. So I sort of fell into this. Then our COO, Christos, came into the mix during that time, saw the potential of what we were doing, and here comes the person with the background that neither Norman or I have, the academic background, the business background, and that's kind of when we got more into the technology side of things.
Okay, so what does Living Opera do now?
Yeah, it feels like it's just growing and changing every day. Like, what I said to the guys, I want to do three things and do them well and stop adding on, but because it's such a unusual platform and potential is there to do many, many things, it is easy to get stretched in many directions. And like I said, that's where it's me as the one with sort of the vision for transforming the internal culture. I have to like rein everything in and say, no, we're doing this for the next 6 months. And even if this amazing opportunity comes, unless it's so compelling, we can't say no, we're just
Sure.
focusing. So right now we have one major project that we're building is an application, an app that will help artists, not just opera singers, but any musician or frankly, any person who can make sound, whether it's clapping their hands or, practicing public speaking. We're creating an app that will allow people to practice more consistently, but also turn that sound into visual art that they can share on social media and even mint as an NFT to create an income stream or create like a small set of patrons.
Okay, whoa, whoa,
Recognizing that.
whoa. This is so cool. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so wait a second. So it's turning the practice session into
Yes.
visual art. Okay,
Yes.
how?
How did that come about? Okay. Um, this came about because if you go on the CV of our partner Christos, he has a devastating amount of academic work and research, so much to the point where I was like, I simultaneously admire you so much, but I also kind of want to smack you. There's like no way for me as an opera singer to measure, and I mean, I will just say like he is exceptionally gifted. So I don't know how many scales I could possibly sing to ever amount to the amount of academic papers he's actually published. But in any case, it got me thinking like there's no way for me to signal to somebody who doesn't know and appreciate opera the gravity of what I do, the seriousness of what I do. There is no tangible way to show that apart from performances, which come and go and they're ephemeral. And unless they're caught on recording, um, it's just a line on your CV. There's no way to actually really account for the amount of work. I will say that when I'm preparing for a role, I'm probably putting in 1 hour of study per minute of music that I'm
Mm.
singing. And the roles that I sing are about 400 pages long. So you start to imagine how many hours of work that's taking. And it's not just how does my voice sound, it's learning a foreign language, it's the rhythms, it's the acting, it's pacing the show. So there's so many layers that go into that have to be managed. Why isn't there a way for me to signal to the world that I'm a serious practitioner, um, you know, at least in the same realm, perhaps, as a serious academic. And that's why I wanted to build this tool. And so that's what we're focusing on now for the next 6 months, is to really get that built. We have a prototype, but we actually have to engineer it now.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the visual representation, is it abstract? I'm
Yes.
picturing it would be
Yeah.
abstract.
It's purposely abstract
Sure.
because we did a small focus group actually. So we have a living opera community around the world. We have thousands of community members in like over 30 countries, 5 different continents. Like I had no idea there's actually so many opera singers. It was like real. But we did a small focus group with them and we sort of crafted it around some of their feedback. But one of the overwhelming points of the feedback was we like the fact that it's going to be abstract, because otherwise we feel we're going to fall into perfectionism, like trying to draw within the lines with our voices or our instruments. And that was a great point that I had never considered. I
Yeah.
was just thinking more about the fact that when I look at sheet music, I don't think I have anything. Well, anyway, everybody knows what sheet music looks like, I guess. When
Hmm.
you look at the notation, unless you know how to read it, it really does just look like a smattering of like dots, right?
Mm.
Um, so I like the fact that this thing registers the sound in an abstract and beautiful way, or it will once it's fully engineered. And there's no way for somebody to get it right. And furthermore, every day, even if you practice the same song every day, it's going to look different with each recording because your voice and your body is a little bit different every day. And I like that too.
I like that too. I like the idea of people being able to see the change the change that takes place when they practice, even for
Yeah,
themselves.
definitely. Consistency is probably the biggest key to success in anything.
Mm,
Just consistently showing up. Once you can consistently show up, I tell my students and my followers and friends, like, basically, like, if you can show up for about a month, then you can start worrying about the quality of the sessions of whatever it is that you're doing. As long as you just actually get in the habit and build that habit,
mm.
then I'm like, so am I actually singing well? Is this actually in tune? Is this actually anything? It's more about, for me, disciplining myself just to make and carve out the time. So I'm really hoping that this will instill a sense of satisfaction in people, and they can see their progress over time. And of course, like, you don't need a tool to do that, but I think it's going to gamify the experience and make it a little bit
Yeah.
easier to show up. And I think we all have our little things like that, our little timers, or our, whatever it is. Um, when I last year, I realized I was getting a little bit undisciplined in certain personal things that were personal for me that I wanted to achieve. And so I just set like a million timers on my phone, but that's not very elegant. It's annoying to hear your alarm go off all the time. I know other people use that tool as well. So this is a way for me to sort of have like a nice and fun and pretty inexpensive way to keep track of my practice sessions, and to hopefully even perhaps make money by practicing. That's actually what I am truly hoping, is that the artists will find a way to leverage their practice time and find patrons around the world who might get a kick out of saying, you know what, I'll pay $10 or $50 or $100, like, for your practice visuals, and say that I'm your patron, because that's kind of, yeah, not something that really happens
Yeah.
so much, but would be extremely fun. And I think it would actually be fun to have like peer-to-peer helpers, and see people, just saying, you know what, I want to invest $20 in my friend over there. They've been super consistent, and now I have their beautiful visual art.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think a couple things come to mind based on what you've said so far. And I know we've only just begun talking about what you guys are up to, but
Yes.
um, with such a large community, um, and when you have a community that you're targeting to help, it
Yes.
makes sense that you would have a lot of things, because the person that is on the other side. That person.
Yes.
The customer avatar or whatever. And so not only that they need this, but they need that. And there's also this opportunity and that opportunity to serve them. So I can see why it would be difficult to choose and stay focused on something, but I can also see how that would be beneficial to actually complete the project before you add another one.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think one of the benefits to Living Opera and this nature of this startup is that all three of us are still prolifically involved in our primary careers,
Yeah.
and this is our. I don't like calling it a passion project, because it's definitely more than like, oh, I just like doing it. I mean, it's more like a movement for me
Mm.
within classical music, and if we can monetize certain parts of it, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But my primary goal with it is to change the internal culture of classical music. Um,
Oh,
and so that's very, very important to me.
can you tell us
Um,
a little bit more about that? What do you mean by
yeah.
changing the internal
Well,
culture of classical music?
so Living Opera, the reason why we started doing these lives and creating the content at
Yeah.
all is Norman went through these intense bouts of performance anxiety, to the point that I thought maybe we were going to have to leave the business altogether.
Mm.
And that's not uncommon in the performing arts and Hollywood. I mean, we see it happening all the time, people burning out, and much worse. So I thought, how can we stay in this business and be a positive impact in the business, and perhaps shift the business? Because I don't really like seeing my loved one go through this, but it's not just him. It's happening to so many people. So many talented people are burning out after maybe 5 years in the spotlight, maybe making it to 10 years. And it ought not to be that way. We should be aiming for 20 and 30-year long careers, because anyway, it takes a bloody long time to
Yeah.
train to be an opera singer. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't even get fun until in your 30s. So, it's just hard prior to that. And then you have all the pressure of learning, how does this mechanism work? So it's a shame to invest, let's say 10 years of training into becoming a highly specialized practitioner, just to burn out because you don't have the relevant tools that you need. And so that's a lot of what I'm reacting to is behind the scenes, nobody's allowed to talk about their experience. And the other part is that when people do end up talking about it, it's because they've exited the business, and there's a lot of bitterness and hurt, and very few stories of actually overcoming, going out the other side, and then coming back to be a positive force in the business. And so it took somebody just saying, is this actually how we all want to live? Like, are we satisfied with this, or can it be different? And it's been really interesting to see the response from our peers who don't necessarily always publicly support the project, but are very supportive behind the scenes, or sending DMs saying, oh, we're so glad you're talking about it. I'm like, well, you can talk about it too, but that's okay. But then the younger singers, the generation coming just up after us, are very responsive to the content. I think the only peril that I'm seeing so far is that, yes, this is our heart posture and our intent with what we're doing, but it doesn't yet reflect the vast culture of the business. And so introducing some of the brutal things that do happen, I'm trying to strike a balance there, and still haven't quite found it, how to convey what people are going to experience, because not everybody's had this shift into a more holistic way of thinking about the practice.
Okay. So you are still trying to figure out how to talk about what in particular?
Oh, I mean, every country, every culture has their own way of engaging with everything. The way the United States engages with opera is not the way France does, the way Germany does, even the way we, do it in Canada. It's all very different. And so I can't impose necessarily, my way of doing something, particularly when, you're talking about the country of origin. So it's like, okay, if I'm in Italy, I have to kind of get in there and understand what is the expectation where I am, because otherwise I'm going to be swimming upstream. I'm going to be having a bad time. I'm going to be entering into conflicts that are unnecessary. I'm going to be offended, which is just the killer of all progress. Offense is just a way to shut down, every experience that you're meant to have. So, just now when I was singing in Greece, although I'm Greek and a Greek citizen, I've never spent an extended amount of time in the country as an adult. I've been there when I was a child, and I've been there a couple of times, and I've been there to do paperwork and stuff, but not working as an opera singer. And so there were things I had to adjust to there. I could decide if I was going to be angry and frustrated and offended at things I didn't understand, even though technically, I'm Greek, but I grew up culturally in Canada, and then I've spent 10 years abroad or more at this point, So that's more what's hard to convey when you're talking about a 10-minute Instagram live or a blog post. Like, how do I help you understand that when you go to interpret a role in France, this is going to happen? Or did you know that if you sing in Berlin, having a standing ovation is exceedingly rare, and you ought not to be discouraged if they don't stand up? It's just not part of the culture. Versus in the United States, if you're a European singer and they do give you a standing ovation, but they stop clapping after 20 seconds, that's not a reflection on the quality either. Whereas because in Germany, the applause might go on for 10 minutes, but they're not going to stand for you. So it's little things like that. Because singing is such an intimate kind of job, and the instrument is inside you, you can never get away from it. It's easy to feel insecure about stuff that you're not meant to carry. And so we're trying to poke into that a little bit and say, look, like, the best way to have a satisfying career, and I would say this is for anybody across the board, is to figure out why on earth you're in that industry, who you're meant to serve in that industry, and get in there and do whatever that work looks like. So if it means 2 days ago, I was standing on the stage singing a Gluck opera, and my act of service that day is, hey guys, I'm singing this really hard opera. I hope you enjoy it. Today, it's to hopefully impart some 1 or 2 nuggets of wisdom to your audience of things that I've learned and I'm still learning. Tomorrow it's going to look totally different. But if I'm in a posture of giving, I will ultimately find personal satisfaction in anything and everything I do. And I'll never have that feeling of a lack of self-worth because I know that I'm being impactful, whether it's the world might call big or small. So that's sort of how I've endeavored to change the internal culture of my sector. But also what I'm trying to build is I sort of understand what on earth is business? What's my part in this? Are our activities going to be more for profit? Are they going to be nonprofit? I think it's going to be a mix, you know, and giving myself the permission to just like not know and find the people who can help me elevate the ideas, because at the end of the day, I think they're good. But if I try to do it all on my own, I won't succeed. I can't change the culture all on my own, and I can't build the products all on my own. And I think that that's a good thing. I don't think we're
Mm.
supposed to try and achieve all things by ourselves.
Mm. You really touch on something that I see a lot as well, and just in business in general, which is people really wanting to know what the measure of success is.
Right.
People are, like you could put numbers to it sometimes, but not
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
gets to put numbers to the work that they
No.
do.
No.
So like you're
No.
talking about, yeah, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say impact is a measure of success, and so sometimes the impact is going to result in a massive financial gain. Um, Sometimes it's going to be someone doesn't commit suicide because of you.
Yeah.
I've had that.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, you know, I know that $1 million is nice, but that was pretty meaningful.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, and I don't have an either or mentality. It's like we can make the millions and make sure people are well mentally, right? So, sorry to interrupt, but you know, as soon as you
Yeah.
said that, I was like, it's impact, it's impact, it's impact.
And I totally understand that. And at the same time, not, you don't always know the impact. It's not
No,
always easy to measure that. And
no,
so,
no, no.
the applause is nice because you're like, okay, well, at least there's some applause. But
Right.
like you said, the different kinds, you interpret it different ways, and whatever the applause looks like for whatever industry you're in, it can be. But I think what I really latched onto to what you were saying was that it's also about what you give. It's how you show up and offer your
Totally,
gift.
totally, totally, totally. You know, and I think coming at it from a performing arts um, standpoint, you know, when I stand on stage, of course, I'm enjoying myself most of the time. Although just now when I was in Boston, I was like, my body was so tired because I was jet lagged. I just gotten off the plane from Greece to the dress rehearsal the next day and then had to do the shows. So I was like having to focus. That superseded the enjoyment a little bit. But ultimately, like that person spent their money to come and hear me. So I'm going to make it worth their while, hopefully, get out of my own headspace and give them something that they will enjoy and maybe even cherish, you know. And I think that applies to business as well. If my only goal is just to make money, and money is important, you know, money answers all things. Money is a tool. Money is we need it. We can't advance without it. We need finance. But if my end goal is only that, I doubt it'll be a lasting solution to whatever it is you're building today. And I think, you know, because we touch on certain Web3 technologies and living opera, I think that's why the whole NFT sort of movement just stalled out. I mean, I literally had people saying, well, Sula, don't be so rigid. It's not technically, this thing I'm proposing to you isn't technically insider trading. I'm like, it actually totally is. Just because there's not a law written about it, you are a despicable human being, and I don't want to do business with you. It's like absolutely wrong. And you're just like, you're inflating something. Anyway, I was just like, this isn't it. That won't have a lasting effect. That will burst. That will implode. And so many businesses that had major raises, I saw like people that we had conversations with, they're not in business anymore. They're not, you know, I'd rather just have like, you know, smaller profits and build consistently and then have a boom than to be like that. And so I think we really have to get our heads screwed on properly
Mm.
and stop prioritizing the short-term gain.
Mm. I would love to hear how you talked about getting out of the headspace, so that you
Yes.
can get into the performance and offer your gift. Can you talk to us about what it looks like for you to get out of the headspace?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So it's funny because this opera that I just sang in Boston, I also just sang it in Greece, which is why I jumped in Boston. So it was like fresh in my mind. And there was a teacher in the audience in Athens who invited me to come and talk to her students. And I thought, that's kind of cool. It's the American International School in Athens. I was like, oh, this is going to be so fun. Well, what should I talk to 12-year-olds about being an opera singer, about technology? By the way, they were super knowledgeable and like knew all about opera and NFTs. And I was like, oh, okay. So this school is amazing. But with those kids, I talked about something for them because they were kids. I talked about like grabbing your bad thoughts and throwing them away. But really, it's about mental toughness and just having the self-discipline to say, you might be freaking out right now, but you really do have to go out there and execute the best you can. And some nights you can command your body and your mind, some nights you can't. Those nights are really hard. But I usually I really do. I just take the thought before it can have like 20 revolutions in my mind, because you'll have a nugget of a thought and then one consequence appears and then another one. I kind of try to stop that process, take it, throw it out, and then get to like the actual heart problem. So what is this? Am I afraid of being ashamed? Am I I don't know, am I projecting something that's probably never going to happen? Does it matter if it does? I ask myself a series of questions until I get to the root of whatever it is that's causing. Because usually, usually those negative things that want to come and like spoil your performance, they're usually a little surface problem that are part of a deeper root issue. And so
Definitely.
I can't deal with the heart issue until I deal with the little thing over here. And so, and of course, being an opera singer, being a performing artist is incredibly tough mentally. So you have to do these kinds of things. It's not just when I have performances. Sometimes you have to do them in voice lessons. Sometimes when you're, I don't know, learning the music to begin with. I mean, just weird stuff will start happening in your mind. So it really is about training your focus and stopping these things in their tracks before they can go and spiral out of control. But it's not always easy, and it is a technique, and it does require practice. You can't just expect to wake up and be able to do that and then do it for 2,000 people. It's like no. Because I'm aware of the perils and the pressures of that live performance. It's very, very often on my mind. Like, okay. And the number one way that I dispel that, besides taking my thoughts captive, is I prepare like a fiend. You're not going to find me missing a line. Lord willing, you're not going to find me. Although on the final line, I was so happy with everything that happened. There was like a beat where I was like, "What's my line again?" Oh yeah. But I'm not going to show up not knowing my stuff, because my rehearsal process is where I'm ingraining this in the muscle memory to the point that I can actually enjoy the performance. And so sometimes I think we like to cut corners on preparation, whatever it is that we're doing, and that's the main cause of anxiety in performance.
Mm. And in like dreams at night, nightmares.
Yeah. But why? Because usually, when you have those dreams about like, oh, I showed up at the test and I didn't know the answers. It's like, yeah, but did you study?
Exactly.
Did you actually put in the consistent work, or did you cram the night before? Yeah, you're probably going to forget that. Like, the roles that I've properly learned, they stay in there for like 10 years. There's muscle memory attached to them. So I have the confidence that unless I'm just like sick, physically, like I can't get the physical, stamina to actually produce the role, it's not going to be a head thing necessarily, because I've really, really taken the time to prepare. I mean, this role that I just sang, the only reason I could do it under this level of pressure, and it was like a lot of pressure, is because I took like 8 months to ingrain it every single day. Every single day. It was just like this like rote thing. Speaking the text, singing the text, playing the text back, doing it. It was just like a sickening amount of work. But it's because I know what I need to do to shine under pressure. I want to walk out on the stage and know exactly what I'm going to do and make the audience feel like it's the first time. And I had to laugh because, I had a rehearsal process in Athens, but in Boston, I had 25 minutes of rehearsal before the dress rehearsal. And they basically were like, stand here in this part, stand here in that part. Otherwise, just kind of follow your instinct. Oh, okay. So, and I couldn't fully recycle the old interpretation because I'm in a totally different costume, totally different colleagues, totally different set. I was singing at Baroque pitch, which meant the entire role was a half step lower than how I'd sung it in Athens. So it's literally all new.
I was going to say that with the muscle memory thing and you're trying to sing it a half step lower.
I was just like, oh, okay. So that's where, thankfully the layers of preparation, the
Yeah.
rhythms, the language, the music, those things don't change. So you can transpose it into a different scenario. But I think as people listen to this, they can probably think about how that applies to whatever it is they do. And we know very well if we don't show up and actually do the super boring stuff, like I'm about to learn a new role, I'm like, well, here we go again. If I don't show up and do that kind of work, um, it's just not fun. And I don't have the freedom to express. And I think that kind of preparation allows for maximum expression. Expression is born out of a foundation of solid preparation. It's not haphazard, and it's not something, the goal is to make it look completely authentic and completely natural and of the moment. But those calculations have to be made well in advance, or you're going to be reactive instead of proactive in your singing. And I think that's like that in business as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy. Yeah. The idea of being able to get up and express yourself. I've always had just personally, I've always had a hard time being able to express my thoughts unless I've already thought it through so that I can say it in the way that I want to say it. So then then it does feel expressive. It does feel honest and natural and whatever. But if I haven't done that work, even just to think through a problem on the front end, then it comes out clunky. I think that there's a lot of people who experience that. So for whatever it is, whatever kind of performance, whatever your audience, I think that can happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's no shame in that, because it's, these things that I'm saying to you, I've deeply thought about them. This isn't just some spur of the moment monologue. I've thought a lot about these things for years. And it's fun because as my career progresses on stage, I have more anecdotal evidence to support the things that I've sort of theorized for myself. And so, coming off this trip the last 3 months, I can sort of unequivocally say, yep, pretty sure these methods work. And I'm going to be applying them to my business as well.
That's great. Okay, what else does Living Opera do? You started to introduce us to it, and then I interrupted.
Yeah, exactly. Took a nice fun tangent. The other main project, we have a few, purely art projects that we're just passionate about. We love them and they're fun. But one of the ways that we're using technology that I'm really proud of, something that we're building, the first iteration of which is just me using sole discretion to grant micro grants to people in our community, which is awfully fun. But what we're building is a much larger grants community that will be self-governing. So right now we're basically building the foundation for that. We're finding the software for that. We're figuring out pricing it, like how much is it actually going to cost to do this? What are the user profiles going to look like? So basically the way this is going to function is we're seeking corporate sponsorship to sponsor individual artists who will be token holders in a gated community. And this community will be self-governing. Every artist will be given free entrepreneurship curriculum that we create, because that's something that's sorely lacking in many higher education programs for artists. Each artist will get a digital credential they can use on social media or like platforms like LinkedIn to signal that they're part of the community and what they're learning. And each artist will have the ability to create grant proposals that will be voted on by the community. And so it only really works if the community participates. And that's part of what I'm hoping to instill in them. It's like your micro engagement, your civic engagement here is a reflection of what we need outside in the world. So, steward this well here, and you will be rewarded with, not just friends and free entrepreneurship training, but we might pay for your voice lessons or your headshots or your new website, depending on, And so the first iteration of that was a launch we did in September, and we raised about $10,000 for the project, which is really fun. And so we sent 2 of our community members to Italy to have voice lessons with my teacher, and that was really, really cool. And I'm really happy because one of those students actually has just gotten into a massive international competition since then, and so we're going to be helping with some of the expenses associated with doing that competition as well. So it's a continuation. In exchange for these benefits, we ask the community to make relevant content for us that we can put on our different platforms and show the corporate donors or individual donors how their money is being used. And because we're doing it all on blockchain, everybody can see exactly how the transactions work. So there's a heightened level of transparency. So that's the other major project that we're getting off the ground. And honestly, that's where we're really learning, because this hasn't really been done in our community. We could have done it possibly like Facebook or something like that, but we want to have our own closed community where we control the tech and where we have autonomy, and just see if we can do it. So the program is called Magic Mozart. Every token is the likeness of Mozart. The artwork is we created it all, and it's based on his final opera, The Magic Flute. And every NFT comes with a personalized minuet that was actually from a music game that Mozart created in the 18th century. It was basically a very complex algorithm. So each person also gets a personalized minuet that's composed on the blockchain. So just on the front end, like the art itself is just kind of like cool art, but the utility behind the project is to help artists become empowered as entrepreneurs in their own right, and to hopefully access funding to go to the next step of their careers.
Wow, that's really cool. So as you're looking ahead into the rest of 2023, what is one of your biggest challenges as the visionary CEO of the company?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, like I said, reining in the various projects and not taking on too many things. Of course, managing everything, because as I'm still singing and Norman's still singing full time, carving out the amount of time we need to create all the content, to steward the existing community, to make sure that everything's functioning properly before we add complexity to the mix. That's probably the biggest challenge. It's not even funding necessarily, because I think the biggest need is funding. But my feeling is when we hit on the exact framework and structure and all the tasks that need to be accomplished in order to bring these projects to life, I actually believe the funding won't be an issue, because these are novel projects that I think I've already met people who are very, very fascinated. They just want to know how it's going to work. And so that's fair enough. I want to know how some of these things are going to work. Frankly, because I'm not a technologist, so I can't say, well, this is exactly how the engineering is going to go down. It's going to be exactly this many hours. These are things that we're actively searching out, so I can present an exact and foolproof budget, a timeline, and say, this is exactly how it's going to work. And I wish that people would be more honest about stuff like that. It's why are we so afraid of admitting we don't fully know how? I don't. I'm an opera singer, but I know the ideas are good, and I know they're going to really help people. But who are the partners that I need to actually realize the ideas? I would say that's probably, besides organization, finances, then the relevant partners who can really bring the vision to life. Because I'll literally draw on a piece of paper for the team, I want it to look like this. And then they're like, oh my God, so how do we, but I want this, or hey, I want to be able to sing into my smartphone, and then this comes out, but I mean, that's the function of technology, is you're realizing an idea in a digital format. I mean, it's not more complicated than that. We don't have, the thing is, we don't have to create this online community. We have a foundation. I can just keep using my own discretion to release the funds, but I want the artists to have the experience of being in a self-governing community and understanding how a mini government works, and that it takes the participation of individuals to actually make up a society, even a micro society like ours, so they feel like they understand more what's happening out in the world, or how do arts organizations work, how does funding work, how are decisions made, how do I write a relevant grants proposal, and how do I do that so I can go out and be impactful? Because otherwise, I know how I used to feel. I just felt like excluded from the mix, and I didn't know how to have any sort of autonomy over my artistic or professional life. And so I want
Mm,
the artists to have this experience. But
mm.
certainly, I mean, I could just fundraise and like give the money out myself and not bother with any of these complicated technologies, and perfectly acceptable. And that's how most nonprofits work. But that's not what I want to do here. I want to create this and see it come to life, and see, I want the individuals to understand the complexity of really coexisting within a community and being responsible for one another and truly showing up for one another, every week or every month, because I want to do a rolling process where grants are given every month to individuals, so it only works if they show up and do the work.
Sure. I mean, that it reminds me of, you were talking about autonomy, and to me, the word agency, personal agency,
Yes.
is what comes
Yes.
to mind. That's something that we really care a lot about and done some of our own work on. And the
Oh,
three
cool.
things that we talk about when it comes to having personal agency is you need credibility, you need
Yes.
opportunity, and then you need acknowledgement of the voice that you have. And
Mm.
so the things that you are doing sound very much like, hey, you have credibility. This is the opportunity that we're giving you. And you're going to see the acknowledgement in time after time after time, seeing your vote count to something, and maybe
Yes.
even
Yes.
count to you, going to you.
Totally. And the other thing too, what if there's like two or three people in the community who, because all of these grants will be done anonymously, so we won't find out until after who got the funds. What if there's somebody who really understands how to do this and get upvoted? Like, what if there's somebody who emerges and they keep getting funded, and people say, well, that's not fair. It's like, okay, but this is also reflecting stuff that happens in the world.
Hmm.
And we need to be comfortable with that. And then maybe that person or group of people can impart, like, oh, well, you know how I create the successful application, I do XYZ. And then the whole company is elevated that way, rather than saying, well, that's not fair, you can't win more than once in a year. It's like, no, because that's not reflective of how the
Hmm.
business world works or how the world works. It's just like some people hit on a formula of success that works for them, and they keep pressing play on it, and they keep expanding and growing, and we can be mad about that. But it's like, it's silly to think that, I mean, okay, if those things didn't exist, then it's like, why are we all different heights? Like, we're just all different, we're all completely different. But I mean, like, really, like, what I'm saying, that diversity, like, it exists, even just in like the fact that I've got green eyes and my sisters don't. So it's like, anyway, that's not a perfect analogy, but you get what I'm getting at. It's just like, all right, instead of me being mad that person was able to secure funding again this month, why don't we just ask them, like, how are you doing that?
Hmm.
That's one that I will say, that's one of the secrets of my progression in my career and in my life, is instead of being angry, jealous that somebody had something that I perceived that I wanted, because actually I eventually realized, like, I want my stuff, I don't want their stuff, but that's a whole other topic, right? I'd be like, how do you play piano like that? Like, literally, how do you do that? How do you sing a high note like that? Can I ask you, like, how you made your first $1 million? I'll just ask. They don't
Yeah.
have to tell me. And some people are not generous, by the way, and they won't tell you. I've had that happen too. But most people love tell you how they did it. And then you are elevated in the process, in your processes, in your thinking, and even in your network, because then it's like that person might be invested in you, saying, well, Soula was like super passionate about learning how to make my first $1 million. And, I remember that entrepreneur that helped me along the way. Like, maybe I'll just make a phone call for her. You know,
Hmm.
that kind of thinking, expands your horizons.
Hmm.
Being jealous just keeps you by yourself and isolated and just at the same level, because there's no iron sharpens iron. So it's like there's no refining in that. I just stay by myself in my own thinking, and it's like, well, that's not very good. That's not helping me get to the next level or whatever I'm trying to achieve.
Hmm.
So
So it sounds like you really care about you really care about um, people being able to have the ability to make an impact in their craft, on their careers, have community, and be able to know that they have more control than what they thought they did.
they do. If a person can harness how they think, they can control a lot more about their reality and their destiny. But if I believe certain things are out of my reach, there's always somebody in your life, or a group of somebody's, who want to tell you about your limitations in life. And some people believe those people and some people don't. I see that existing in my own family. I just couldn't believe those lies. Like, I was just like, I don't even know what you're talking about right now. It's just like not true about me. But I'm natured differently than my sisters. And so they'd have to speak to their own experience. But I know that those lies hit different in their lives. And so it's like, well, some people, that kind of negative energy, it just propels them forward. For me, it was so repulsive to think about those limitations and worse. I won't get into some of the terrible things that people said to me, but like, I just was like, it's not me, not me, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me. And that just came from within. That wasn't because I had some kind of like big support system. That's just my nature. My husband is natured differently. He tends to be a bit more on the pessimistic side of things. I don't know why. He's just like that. Now he's trying to change because he's realizing that's not really serving him. And why bother? You know, if you can look at things and just trust that there's some element of them that will work out, let's focus on that. Let's focus on the thing that can actually grow. It's like, why would you plant a garden and then suddenly say, well, these tomatoes will never grow? It's like, why did you plant it in the first place? Then water the tomatoes, go back daily, clip the little whatever. I don't garden, but anyway, you got the picture. Like, just go and like take care of the garden. Don't go there and be like, well, this is stupid, or just throwing like sod on it. It's like your words and your actions, water the garden of your life. So it's like, if I were to stand backstage and say, I'll never get through this show, the audience is going to hate me, the reviews are going to be terrible, going to disappoint my family. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I do this. Well, yeah, I mean, that's like definitely going to come to pass, because if you can't get agency over your own thoughts and your own words, how are you possibly going to sway anybody to come alongside of you for whatever it is you're trying to build? And it doesn't work.
Hmm. That's great. Okay, I've got another question, one more question for you after I ask about where can people find Living Opera and
Okay.
yeah, all the things.
Okay. So our content is sort of spread out in different places and for different people. So my Instagram channel is at Soula_Parassidis. That's really geared towards the opera community. I do a lot of actually comedic videos. I know we've been pretty serious on this podcast, but during the pandemic, I started using comedy to sort of uplift people and reach non-opera people, actually, to pull them into our world.
Hmm.
And that's been really fun and a great source of entertainment, even just for me personally, but thankfully for other people as well. So that's one channel. If people just want to kind of see the more playful side and learn a bit about opera, you can find me there. Living Opera is www.livingopera.org. I'm very happy with our website, although we're going to be making some changes to it because we've newly just filed paperwork to add a nonprofit wing to Living Opera called the Living Arts Foundation. So we'll be talking about some of our projects there, including the microgrants community that I described. And we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the various channels. But if you just look for Living Opera, we're the only ones. So
Sounds great. And
Yes.
we will definitely we'll link to all of those places that you
Wonderful.
mentioned in the
Thank you.
show
Thank you. Thank
notes.
you.
Hmm. Okay, so my last question for you is,
Yes.
this is the Voice of Influence podcast. Is what
Okay.
a fitting conversation we just had. And so I guess my last question for you is, for somebody who wants to have a voice of influence,
Mhm.
what last piece of advice would you give them?
Well, what I'm feeling to say um, is I think healing is really important. Human beings, every person that exists goes through difficulty, varying levels of difficulty, even to leading to trauma. So it's very challenging to be a positive influence when you're bleeding all over people. So it's very important to do the hard work of, of coming to terms with your experience and being at peace with your experience as best you can. Some things are very challenging. And then you can turn your thoughts and heart and mind and influence to the general public and say, I've been there and you will overcome this. And I think that's the main key, because otherwise, you might give people a few tips and tricks, but they'll be superficial. But for me, influence is really about helping a person turn in a direction that brings them into flourishing in life. But the first step is being healed.
Hmm. Thank you for that word of encouragement and challenge to the audience. We really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
for sure.
And
For
thank you
sure.
for being a voice
My
of
pleasure.
influence, goodness in your
It's my
industry
pleasure.
and with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.